What's happening, Greg?
I'm good, Jonathan. How are you?
All right. Doing all right.
Just trying to finish up an email here.
Good morning, good afternoon.
Hey, Bart.
How are you?
Doing all right. How about you?
I think like all of us, we're champing at the bit to have full movement.
Hey, Matt.
How are you?
All right. How about you?
Good, thanks. How are you guys?
All right.
Well, thank you.
Am I having a flashback, Joe, or is that just your background? I mean, is it?
You know, I like to get creative with my backgrounds. Found that little ditty, I think on a Twitter thing or something. I like that.
We'll give it another minute or two here, guys, because people are coming in, and then we'll get rolling.
Excellent. I already have 30.
And it's climbing. What's the over under?
45.
Howard?
Hey, Jonathan, how are you?
Oh, good. Mason back in the office, got a tie on.
Yep. After work.
Turn it up, Mason.
I have a
It's not
tour.
working. I don't know if anybody else is in the state of Michigan.
And he hasn't shaved yet.
Actually, I just read in today's Wall Street Journal that Michigan has the most people getting back to work and everything in the whole country right now.
Oh, probably because of the automotive.
Yeah, well, I don't know, or despite the governor's rules, so yes.
Yes, definitely despite that.
Interesting.
Still not enough.
Got it. Yeah, we're just kind of going around.
Mason, how was it putting on a belt and doing buttons? Was it hard?
I think we should hold Mason's picture up against Greg Ellis's picture for the before and after.
There you go.
Hey, wait, Greg, did you shave or just having a bad picture?
I would take that as a no.
I trimmed it back. It's like a 2-day stub.
Yeah, I was going to say, yesterday it looked a little bushy.
Yeah, no, I did that this morning. After I
All right,
actually showered.
Let's give it another minute and we'll get going. Fred, are you about ready? I'll do.
I'm ready when you are, Jonathan.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, everybody. Thank you very much for being here for another free Corfac Zoom meeting. I really hope that you found the other ones valuable. And of course, if you have any suggestions on future programs, please let us know. And if I could ask everybody to mute their phones, unless they're asking a question later, that would be great. It's my pleasure to introduce Fred. I've known Fred going back to my CCIM days. And when I contacted Fred, he immediately responded and offered to do this program for Corfac at no charge. So thank you very much, Fred. Valuation Alliance has been a strong supporter of Corfac as a conference sponsor. Some may remember Obi Wally, who has been at our Corfac conferences in the past. They have worked with Corfac firms like Garibaldi and Claiborne, and they're here to help any Corfac firms as needed. They provide strategic planning, merger and acquisition and valuation for independent commercial real estate services firms. So Fred is managing partner of Valuation Alliance. He has 38 years of commercial real estate services experience and 25 years of corporate real estate services experience. Prior to Valuation Alliance, and this is where I got to know Fred pretty well, he served as president and COO of Coldwell Banker Commercial. So once again, if you could please mute your phone, that would be terrific because it gets rid of the background noise. And if you have any questions during the presentation, many of you know there's a chat feature at the bottom of the screen. So feel free to put your questions in there. I will monitor them and pass them on to Fred. So thank you all again for being here very much. And Fred, it's all yours.
Jonathan, thank you, and I wish all of you, hopefully you're home and safe, or I see a lot of you are out working, which is an encouraging sign. And really, the purpose is today is, the name of this is Strategies to Navigate into the Unknown, because we truly are in unknown territory. And if there's a few things, if you have notepads in front of you, I'd say a couple things to write down. One is the past does not equal the future. All right, so what occurred 6-8 weeks ago is going to be very different than going forward. And if X, then Y. You'll hear me say that a few times. It's like a mathematical equation. And what that means is, if this change has occurred, what is the consequences of it? So if you can go to the next slide, please. Over the last few weeks, and for those of you on audio, there's a quote here by Winston Churchill: "Success is not final, failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts." And I think over the last few weeks, I've seen quite a few presentations start off with quotes. So are you guys getting feedback? I just want to make sure can you hear me all right?
No, you're fine, but we got a couple of people who aren't muted and we're getting some background. Well, there we go. I think that might have.
Perfect. So, and I'm I'm a military history buff, and I was wondering why Churchill was quoted so much, but it makes sense because in the darkness of the beginning of World War II, all of you familiar with that history, he was the shining light. He was the beacon in the darkness that showed a way forward, certainly to the Dutch resistance, the French resistance, the British people. And make no bones about it, this is the equivalent of a war. We're in a global war against this pandemic, literally and figuratively. So it's appropriate to think that Churchill was quoted. With that being said, history does repeat itself, and pandemics have been going on for over 500 years, and it's actually manifested itself in some profound changes in real estate, which is our business, what we're talking about today. So for instance, Jonathan, you and your team are in Chicago. Well, in the 1850s, the Chicago River, the flow of that was changed away from Lake Michigan because there was typhus and people were drinking from that water. So they literally changed that river so that the Lake Michigan was not getting polluted. The same thing with the sewer systems in New York and Paris and London. They changed the whole sewer system, which fueled the growth of those cities because pandemics were occurring. And so my point is, this is not the first time in history that we've encountered this, but there are profound changes that are happening. And more importantly, as we're talking about all this today, is telescoping through you to your clients, to the end user. What does this mean to your clients? What are the changes they're going through, which is key. So the purpose is not to give you solutions, but it's like raising kids. For those of you who have children, there's two ways, right? There's one is the famous quote where you can clear the path for them and make sure there's no obstacles in the way and clear a pathway, or you can show them how to navigate the pathway, whether there's a stone, a rock, or a boulder in their way, and how to navigate around it. And that second part is what we're going to look at today. Over the next few minutes, we'll talk about the shifts in our industry, some of the systemic shifts that were going on before this that accelerated at light speed. I'll give you 3 case studies from past downturns during my career, and actually how we viewed change as opportunity as a team and as the groups and individuals that I work with, but also how we navigated that change and actually learned to thrive through the change. Then we'll also look to the key success attributes of what I have found in commercial real estate people, meaning you, and more importantly, your internal discussion, you know, this change that we've all going through, working from home, working remotely. What is the internal discussion that you're having with yourself and how to reinforce good behaviors? So with that being said, if you go to the next slide, please. So you see the picture there. We're going, when you look at crisis, it goes from urgency to stabilization to recovery. Now, depending on where you are in the United States, it could vary widely. It can go anywhere, and typically, like I'm up in the New York metropolitan area, we're still probably on the right-hand border of that urgency stage, gradually moving into stabilization, but I don't think that's going to happen as quickly here as it will in a lot of other parts of the United States. Moving to stabilization and then over to recovery. So it really depends on where you are, and I point that out to all of you because where you're sitting in the United States, this may not seem like a pandemic right now, and therefore it may be very different for each of you. So I don't want to have a lot of universal truths here. What we do know is that the commercial real estate industry, the transformation has occurred at light speed. It really, in terms of the system, what's going on. And having said that, there were some systemic shifts that were occurring throughout the business, namely in the office and retail sector. We know in the retail sector, it's accelerated what we thought was a 5 to 7 year process of changing in retail, literally to this, you know, the last 5 to 6 weeks, all the bankruptcies that are going on in the United States, the way people are shopping, omni-channel approach. I mean, I can remember sitting on 2 or 3 panel discussions about the demise of department stores on ICSC things 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. So that transition, that systemic shift has occurred right now. Now, as a result of that, what you have is this X then Y. What does that mean to your clients? If X is happening with retail, what does that mean to the clients? And more importantly, what happens with space, rent, and all those different variables in the equation? Office space, okay, reimagining the workplace. We're all working from home. I'm reading, as you are, I'm sure, article after article about working from home and the transition and the demise of office space. I would say the same thing at 9/11, where I thought nobody would go back into downtown Manhattan and would go to a high-rise office building. But yet, you know, here we are, and a lot of people were in those buildings until the last few weeks. So there's changes that are going to happen that are going to be profound, but it may not be as extreme as everybody thinks. The bottom line is nobody really knows at this point. I do know this, and I've made a living over the last 40 years doing this. We moved in this business, you move, particularly companies, with regard to industrial, office, even retail, you move from centralized to decentralized, and I think we're moving very much into a decentralized pattern. Jonathan, I'm sorry, you have a question, or was there?
Fred?
Yes.
Fred, this is Kurt Walsh. I have a question.
Sure.
So just because you're on stabilized, we are not in a stabilized situation yet, right?
No.
Okay.
No.
Any idea on when you think that's going to happen?
Anybody who tells you they think they know, they really don't, Kirk, to answer your question. And
Well, no, you can't know, but I mean, do you have any thoughts?
But I will tell you this, and when I get into the case studies, my experience going, when I was in 9/11, going through the Snl crisis in the 90s, and then going into the financial crisis, in terms of providing services, this is about a year-long process. So this is not a flick of the switch and it's going to happen overnight. So let's take a step back. What's the average gestation period for a transaction in our business? It's generally 6 to 12 months, if not longer, right? So if all the deals have stopped right now, we're probably not going to see a lot of activity unless we have things in the pipeline already for the next 6 months. Now, having said that, there's a lot of pent-up energy and demand and people looking to get back into the game, but I don't think it's going to be as quick as everybody's anticipating. And one of the saving graces is the Fed, the boatload of money and liquidity has been pumped into the system. But, you know, there's a boatload of small businesses that are, as you guys are reading every day, there's a 20% unemployment rate right now. So there's a lot of different variables that are going on in the equation. So I would say my personal opinion is 6 months to a year to really see true activity. Industrial, the supply chains, we were talking about the industrial side of the business. The disruption to the supply chains, the onshoring of manufacturing, the biopharma, life sciences, all these different elements, and how that integrates with the retail and the e-commerce side, the last mile in terms of smaller square footages and home delivery. Consumers are hunkered down right now. There's two different things. There's commodity purchasing and then discretionary purchasing, and they're very much in the commodity mode right now. And then when they move to discretionary, how will they buy things and where will they buy things? So it's getting back to that omni-channel approach. The bottom line is these were shifts that were occurring already. The average square footage per employee was going down in office space. Now it's going to increase. In fact, David Arena, the head of real estate for JP Morgan Chase, was saying that he thought that given the 6-foot distancing rules and everything, that they could only occupy 50% of their current occupied base based on these rules. So does that mean there will be a need for more office space, contrary to what people are saying, or decentralized office space, or a combination thereof? And my purpose in this discussion with you today is just to think through the consequences and the different scenarios. You don't have to have all the answers right now, but it's seeing what, if this happens, what happens here, and what does this mean to your clients? So it's getting into that mindset, if you will. Multifamily, urban versus suburban. Multifamily is probably going to be it has been one of the best investments. It probably will continue to be, given what's going on. Although I will tell you, in terms of the new construction is coming on, according to the Urban Land Institute, only 10% of the population can afford the units that are coming on the market in terms of income. So is there lower income or moderate income housing coming online, and what does that transition mean? And then investments, the cash flows. A lot of you are involved in investment brokerage or in investments yourselves. On the retail side, the average collections, if you look at the REIT public, the broadcasts of the different REITs that are out there, Tanger outlets, the discount outlet, they've only had 12% rent collections last month. Brookfield had 25 to 30% rent collections. So there's a boatload of trouble in terms of rents and collections. And then what does that mean in terms of distressed assets and becoming familiar with all the lease clauses? All those different elements that we had 10 years ago are going to be brought forward now. So getting yourself around default clauses on leases, distressed assets, and the laws that are involved. I was talking to one of my partners yesterday on other business. If you know Jerry Moore and Chuck Bauer, who were, we formed a corporate services group called RV3 Solutions. And one of the things we were talking about was how making sure that you can get paid commissions from the tenants that you're representing and dealing with the landlord. So we're back to that mode where not only do you have to underwrite your deals or your leases or whatever, you have to make sure you can get paid. So that element of this needs to be brought back into the equation right now with all the uncertainty that's out there. Not to be negative, but it's just a matter of understanding what's going on there. You can go to the next slide, please. So having said that, and we're talking now about, okay, what are the things this is a very unique and every crisis is different, but there are patterns and things that evolve. So to share with you, I thought I'd give you 3 case studies that I had in my career that we actually used to be able to get into the business and view change as opportunity. Again, you'll see it on item 3C there. And I might add, change is opportunity in our business, whether it's good or it's bad. And I know that sounds, I don't mean that to sound the way it does, dehumanize this, but bad things happening sometimes is as big an opportunity as good things happening. So back in 1990 to 92, we had an Snl crisis, which was really a huge impact for those of you on the commercial side of the business. There was a 3-year supply of industrial real estate, new construction, and a 5-year supply of office space in the United States. So in 92, I spent my first 20 years at CB Richard Ellis. In 92, I was jumping back into the cubicles into production after having operated 3 offices for them for 6 years. And decided to go into the office side, tenant rep side versus the landlord rep. And we were here in New Jersey, a very successful office on the landlord side. because there was such a supply of office space. So I was just looking at the market, and I jumped into that side and very quickly involved into what we call corporate services, multi-market representation of multi-tenanted users around the United States and in regions. Believe it or not, it didn't exist at that moment in time. That specialty, that area, that part of the business did not exist. Formed the first formal team in all of CBRE, and then started going out and pitching and identifying clients and winning business from that. And that was an 18-year run for me until I became president of Coldwell Banker Commercial. I was a tenant rep corporate services person for many of those years. So it was looking at the market, understanding the change, what was happening with the supply, and jumping to the occupier side. And it was has been and was a very profitable business for us. Item B is the 9/11 situation, certainly here in the New York metro area. The suddenness of it was very analogous to what we're going through now. It was a very sudden, obviously an extremely sudden element, more sudden than the virus, but that feeling of it was there. And the case study that I had on that one really was, we were there for our clients. We were there to listen to them. We were there to understand what they were going through, and then starting to look at what the future entailed. One of the elements of this is we actually had a client in the New York metro area. There's a lot of trading floors for Wall Street and backup trading floors. And with 9/11, it obliterated downtown Manhattan in terms of trading floors. And one of our offices, I was at a small boutique firm called United Systems Integrators. It's now part of Johnson Controls, which is now part of CBRE. But anyway, we had a client, was very confidential. I didn't know who it was, but they needed a trading floor up and running because they had lost their trading floors in the World Trade Center. Spent 48 hours straight. We worked straight through. I identified 3 locations with a co-broker on one of them. We had the deal done and signed the deal. Well, after it was all said and done, I found out who the client was. And 11 months later, I was asked to go to a presentation in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It was RBC Dean Rauscher, and their head of real estate was there. And I walked in the room, and he looked at me and he said, "Were you the guy who did the deal for us in New Jersey?" And by the way, we did that free of charge, no fees. And I said, "Yes, I was." And we did win that business. Now, we didn't do that with the idea, it was just to help a client out and help someone out in a time of need. So we didn't do it with any consideration for future business or anything else, but at the end of the day, it did pay off. So sometimes you make an investment in your future. And I think being there and communicating, and what I call prioritize, focus, win, looking at your clients, prioritizing the ones that you think have the most need, focusing, vicious focus. And I think if there's something right now that we all need to do, is really focus on what parts of the business we need to work on, where we need to be, and then fulfilling or winning the business. The last one is pivot to profit, which is the financial crisis. Had an up and running, very mature corporate services real estate team. And when the 2008-2009 financial crisis hit, it looked like and felt like for business, the end of the world. And in fact, I said to my team, I said, "Look, I don't know what the future holds here, but I don't think corporate America is going to be making a decision for the next couple of years. So let's move to the distressed asset side." And my team, I don't want to say they fought me, but they were very, very reluctant to go to that side of the business. But I did say, "Look, we understand how to scale. We understand a real estate process. Let's map it over. Let's start talking to the banks and start to go after this business." Well, the bottom line is we won a bunch of accounts. FDIC was one of them, by the way, and in fact, made more profit during that 3 or 4 year period handling distressed assets and sales and mapping our processes over than we did before. I might also add to you, and I think it's important for this because there's a new normal here in terms of what we're going through right now, that we averaged 1 to 2 presentations a week for about a year and a half period from like 2009 through 2010 to 11. And we did it all via WebEx. Now, WebEx is an outdated delivery mechanism. We're on Zoom right now. In fact, the founder of Zoom is a former WebEx executive, and WebEx's audio and visual was a little bit outdated. But I learned, and I'm old school, I like to get in front of the clients, get on an airplane, eyeball them. but my team convinced me to go pitch the business via WebEx. And for those of you who are old school like I am or whatever, and we're doing this via Zoom, presenting through mediums such as this became a normal thing. And I will also tell you that our win ratio was just as high as if we jumped on an airplane or we were sitting in front of the client. My point in bringing that up is we're in a new normal right now. So for those of you out there, if you're looking at, okay, how do I get into the game? Learning how to work with these mediums, learning how to present from them, how to talk through them, understanding that you need to have very good microphones, audio, visual, and how to work through those elements is extremely important. And it's a set of skills. It used to not be nice to have, now it's a have to have given the change that's going on. Also, I have found that clients are very comfortable having you to talk to you in this kind of a scenario. And I found with the bankers, especially back then, that they were very willing to share a lot more than if I was sitting physically in the room with them, which is very counterintuitive. But if you think about it, they feel compelled to make a decision right on the spot or to kind of give you an indicator. Whereas when they're sitting in the, without the pressure of you being in the room, they're very open. So anyway, that's one of the bottom lines. But all three of these, the idea, and by the way, it took about a good year for all three of these to implement them. That's to the earlier question from Kurt. And it's moving things forward and making money even when the change is there, or being able to serve clients, I should say. Any questions? Good. Next slide, please. So we talked about the client, we talked about the case studies. I think just as important right now is looking at yourselves, and I'm speaking as much to the agents and producers that are out there as I am to the owners and managers and leaders. Throughout my career, whoever I've hired or worked with in this business, I've seen all different backgrounds, but there's 4 key attributes for success that I've always seen. And I think I'll spend a few minutes on these because I think it's important for you all to kind of do some introspection now, but at the same time, discuss a little bit those key things. One is the ability to overcome obstacles, to persistence, grit, never giving up. Having said that, you need to be flexible with regard to that. If you're going in a certain direction and you keep banging away at it, it's not working, you got to be adaptive to the change. So if the obstacle's too big, you need to move around it or figure out another way to go there. So having that is key. The second point, probably one of the most important ones right now, given that we've been locked down and you've been working from home or shut down, is the internal discussion, the positive attitude, and believing in yourself and self-confidence. But that discussion that is going on inside of you, the way you're talking to yourself, is just as important right now as the external discussion, which is, and most of us are very confident, self-assured in what we do, or at least to come across that way if you had any level of success in this business. But that internal part of this is what I'm talking about now. And avail yourself of positive, uplifting information. Don't feel guilty about things. Make sure that you really are availing yourself of motivational items, particularly at this point in time. I'm doing that quite a bit. Whatever elements that are out there that keeps you positive and upbeat, that internal discussion has to keep occurring. Turn the news off. You know, if you're watching to the news, it's very depressing right now. I listen to the news once a day now. You know, I turn on CNBC, check it out, but you know, all those things. So it's important to put yourself mentally and internally in an environment that helps you then in your external environment. I would also say a lifelong willingness to learn. This is about being open to new ideas, new thoughts. I just talked a little bit about how to present, a new way of presenting to your clients if you haven't already, but also being very open to new ideas, new discussions, and that openness, that ability to listen to anyone or anything and avail yourself of that. At the end of the day, you will see opportunities and patterns if you are open-minded about things. And then, of course, having principles and core values and the ability to get along with others is extremely important. And ironically, in this kind of a scenario, the banding together, like you're doing at CoreFact through networks for individuals in your offices, helping each other out and helping you help your clients is extremely important. So I think those are 4 key qualities. The one I would say, if you were to ask, all of them are extremely equally important, but right at this moment in time for all of us, that internal discussion, that internal motivation, that internal view. Spend some time on yourself, sharpen the saw, do all the things that are necessary to help you with regard to that. Any questions or anything? Okay, you go to the next slide. So we talked about yourself. Now let's talk a little bit, and we can spend hours on this slide alone, on what your clients are looking at, what they're feeling. And there's a thing, in sales, want versus need, and the distance between the two is what we call the value distance. And you can find that what they truly need right now versus what they want. They really, right at this moment in time, given all the changes that are going on, they really don't know what they need. You probably may have a better idea of that. So understanding that, gaining insight, and helping them to understand what their true needs are very important. There are 4 different areas. This is my terminology. I don't know if it's necessarily, well, I think it's pretty accurate in terms of what a client's looking different, where they are in different things. Some clients are going to be hunkered down. They're in the bunker. They're slamming on the brakes. They're not moving forward or doing anything. The next is intimidated. They're pained. They're feeling it, but they're patient. They're kind of taking a wait and see attitude. The hesitant clients, they're comfortable. They're seeing the opportunities and they'll say, we'll get through. And then the ideal client is, let's go for it. Let's go forward. Now, it depends on where your client is on this spectrum or some spectrum, how you're going to deal and interact with them. I would certainly say you don't want to sell or be marketing to them in any way. In fact, the way you market and sell yourself right now is going to be, should be, and needs to be very different than the way you did it 6 to 8 weeks ago. It won't work. People don't want to be sold right now, but they do want trusted advisors. It's not about your brand right now. It's about you, okay? And what you bring to the table, your confidence, your knowledge, your information, that's going to be key. And so clients will always need help. Prioritize your clients. Maybe like we always talk about your A list, B list, C list, and then look at them. When you're speaking with your clients, listen, ask questions. Take notes when the clients are speaking to you. Really give, and then reflect back what they're saying. There's a famous study of waiters and waitresses. They did a study in the United States where how they get which group got more tips. Was it a group that was really kind and nice, which is extremely important, and polite, or a waiter that took somebody's order and then read the order back to them? And amazingly, they found that the people that took the order and then they literally read the order back to the people got higher, 25 to 30% higher tips than the people that were just polite and nice. That's not to say you shouldn't be polite and nice, but the point is people want to feel that they're being listened to, okay? There's a simple model in coaching for coaching individuals, like it's the GROW model that I've used for many, many years, and I'll give as an acronym. It's like spin selling, but the GROW model is where are they at now? What's their goal? What is their current reality? You ask questions around that. What are their options? And you ask them questions of what are the options they have, and then what's the way forward? And you ask them about their way forward. And moving them through those different steps, you're asking good questions, which is always the key to good selling, but also understanding that, and then giving them ways forward or different options and underwriting the different scenarios that you come up with overall. Any questions so far? Okay, next one. So I kind of covered this a little bit earlier, but being out there for your clients. Good, I'm sorry. Asking what you could do, review your ideas, giving them, offering your help, being there for them, even if you have nothing to offer or help them with, extremely important. Schedule provisional 6-week visit or meeting. In other words, if they're hunkered down or locked down right now, say, look, let's put it on your calendar for 6 weeks out. Let's see if when we get closer to that moment, if it's the appropriate time for us to talk, but put something on the calendar so you're moving things forward, okay? Taking all the information. Now, I've seen so much stuff about workplace strategies and getting back to work and how to get, it's almost overwhelming the amount of information that's coming there in our industry. Be the systems integrator and a synthesizer and provide that information to your clients in a very organized, systemic way. And your clients have changed, okay? You have a different kind of client right now than you've had 6 to 8 weeks ago, and understand where they are in those different categories. And again, offering up help, social media, podcasts, web, this Zoom calls, learning how to use the presentation technology is extremely important. Video or audio, some clients want the video, some want the audio. I turn the video off when I'm speaking to you because it's distracting to see myself there. And things. So for different people, it's different things. And like I said earlier, they want a trusted advisor, not just companies. There you go. Next slide, please. So in wrapping up, and I know I've moved through this somewhat quickly, but I'm really open to any questions. You know, change, we're in a new normal. Change is opportunity. We as an industry are literally on the front lines. Now, we're not first responders, don't get me wrong on that regard, but we are literally on the front lines of business, seeing the change that's happening, seeing the consequences of that, and observing that. And real estate's a manifestation of the strategy for all of our clients, no matter what side of the equation you're on. And so therefore, you are going to be looked to, or we all need to position ourselves as the experts as to seeing what are the manifestations of this and what's happening. Even if there isn't one answer, it's a series of answers. So with that being said, I'd be glad to answer any questions, discuss the market, anything else you guys want to talk about, but I'm here for you, and whatever we can do to be of assistance. Hello.
Hi.
Hello. John?
Hi.
I'm here.
Hey, how are you?
I have a not a kind of a question. This is Dave Pryor in Los Angeles. Good morning.
Hey, Dave, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. I think this is terrific. And just maybe for some of the younger people, and maybe you could comment on kind of the nature of a phone call that you're making today, because I have this saying that's kind of stupid, but very true. 90% of businesses have social. And
Yeah. Go ahead.
I think that people like to talk before they get into the business aspect of a call. So will you comment on that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, yes. A lot of it depends on your style and who you are and parts of the country. You know, if I'm talking to, I'm generally ask people how they're doing and certainly now, how are you doing? What are you going through? What's your situation? The good news in this, for us, I think in one way is a lot of clients are available right now because they have time on their hands. They're working from home and can have discussions with you. But I think taking the time to see where they're at, what's going on with them, you know, if there are kids in the house and they're running around, you know, it's a very human thing. And in fact, if anything, this part of, if there's anything from this pandemic, it's brought us all together because it's humanized a lot of people. You know, you see it on TV, you see it everywhere. So to your point, Dave, I think it's very important to be very human. Now, I will tell you, living in the New York metro area, like if you're in New York City, the pleasantries are quick, to the point, and you get on and get off and you're dealing things. But if I'm speaking to someone from the South or the Midwest and even the West, asking about the family, going through the ritual discussion is very important. So it really does depend on where you are. But yes, I think the human side of this, people will open up much more than they ever have. And you need to understand that. And that's called empathy, right? You need to really say, hey, how are you doing? How's your family? How's everything all right? You know, what's going on there? Okay, so.
I would say that I've had relationships that I consider to be okay, to be much better now after having a few long conversations with clients where we're both locked down at home. I think it's just a terrific time to strengthen the existing relationships.
Totally agree. And also, even, like I said, even if you have nothing to offer to them, and you really don't, right? If you think about it right now, they're not making decisions on real estate at this moment, unless if they're in a desperate situation, then you're going to be talking to them. But just offering help and assistance and being there for them says a lot about you to them and them to you, and they'll remember that. You know, that RBC case study I was telling you about, worked with that guy for 48 hours straight, didn't know him. Again, they didn't want him there. I truly didn't know their name. and was extremely appreciative, didn't take a fee for it or anything else. And that manifested itself a year later, we're going into a room to pitch for that business. So
Yeah.
it's an investment in the future. But yes, speaking to clients, getting on the phone with them, and truly listening. And that's why I was saying some of the basics, taking notes, those types of things is very important, particularly on the business side, but also just listening to what they're going through.
Fred, I got a question from Howard in New York who asks, how do you see the ability for tenant reps to make money during the next 6 to 12 months?
I think there's going to be, well, two things. One is you in New York City, okay, we talked a lot of discussion about the ramping up workplace strategies. There's thinking that it'll go in increments, 5 to 10 to 15 to 20% of the space will be occupied as they're ramping up here with master. New York is a very unique set of circumstances, I will say that. But having said all that, you can anticipate either clients are going to be shrinking in their footprint or increasing their footprint, but maybe not in the same place. And so looking at the trends and talking to your tenants about, okay, here's what XYZ is doing. Here's what the big banks are doing. Here's what is going on in these parts of the city. And here's what other tenants are doing in terms of best practices, and reflecting that back, frankly, creates a big opportunity for you. I started a corporate services tenant rep practice during the Snl crisis in a very similar circumstance where there wasn't a lot of as much occupancy, just looking at the fact that, okay, what are you doing to we started renegotiating leases, getting lower lease rates, blend and extend, all those different things that clients go through in this kind of a scenario. So believe it or not, tenants probably need more help now than they've ever done, given the changes that are on them. Like I said, going to that changes opportunity thing, even if it's a negative change, if they're going through all those different, what's my cost to break even is going down. How do I get out of my default clauses on my leases, force majeure. There's a million things you can go in right now and look at their leases and help them out with. So believe it or not, it's just how you look at things and approach them versus, whether they're going to grow or contract. At the end of the day, it's the change they're going through that creates that opportunity. There is no one answer right now. And that's part of the point of this discussion is underwriting and looking at the various changes your clients, and the industry is going through, and seeing if scenario one happens, here's the outcomes for scenario one. If scenario two happens, here's the outcomes, and looking at the different outcomes. And that's a decision tree, right? It's the classic Harvard Business School, looking at, okay, if this happens, then this, if this happens. So looking at those things and being totally immersed in terms of the information that the markets are presenting, and then translating that to your clients in terms of what it means for them and their industry.
Any other questions out there from the audience? We still have a few minutes if you have any. As I mentioned early on, Fred and Obie and Valuation Alliance are available to Corfac firms. If you guys want to talk, get on the phone, find out what their services are like. And I see a couple of the Garibaldi guys on the call. I know the Garibaldi group has worked with Valuation Alliance. I know the Klaben Company has worked with Valuation Alliance. So just
Great companies, great advisors.
Hey, Jeffrey, how you doing?
I'm good, Freddie. How are you doing?
Good, buddy. Good. So
Yeah, I didn't have a question as much as just something that's consumed me for the past 60 days, and its timing is everything. But one of the dilemmas or challenges I've had with my clients is that we spent about 2 years trying to get them to early vacate their premises. We had a termination option that they had to exercise, or that they could exercise and shorten their lease. And they wanted to go and redesign their space to today's workspace, trends and what have you. So they spent the past 6 months going through this whole new redesign. Before, pre-COVID, they signed the lease agreement, and we're about to, file for permits, and then this COVID started. And the effort that's taken place since then to mobilize architect, engineer, furniture dealers to redo the plan to really now meet what was going to be what we believed to be the new, workspace layouts and things of that nature. And it's been, it's just been very challenging because they have a short window of time because they already terminated their lease. They have to the end of the year to do it. And the timing was just perfect as we were all lined up. And here we are now going back in and changing plans and what have you. And we're getting the cooperation of, some of the parties that are involved, the new landlord, the existing landlord. We've built in some flexibility there to extend the lease now that we've terminated it. And then the new landlord has been given some relief relative to the delay caused by everything being shut down, namely being even the municipalities from the standpoint of getting permits. And there was other than non-essential or other than essential, construction was stopped here in New Jersey as well. But I don't know if anybody's had that experience. It's very much a timing issue. Had they already been gone through and building all out, they would have been spending that much more money probably redesigning it anyway. And but it's been a quick lesson in terms of how to fast track the redesign of the space that was just designed, and they were even going for LEED certified as well. But it's had a rippling effect in many areas, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, and it's ramifications of it is workplace strategies, working from home, virtual officing, depending on where you are in the country. How does that manifest itself? And there's, I'm hearing different opinions. The conventional opinion, if it's conventional, given it's only 8 weeks of this, but is that there'll be less office space needed, right? That's what you're hearing because people are virtual officing and hoteling and everything else. Yet I heard Eric Schmidt, who's the CEO of Google, was on, I think, Meet the Press or Face the Nation on Sunday. And he was saying the exact opposite. He's a very bright, capable guy. He was saying he thinks that there's going to be more square footage needed, but it'll be in a decentralized way because you're going to need to have more spacing and people still need to aggregate. They still need to get together and do things, but it'll be a decentralized thing, which is probably good for, like, we live in the suburbs, obviously where Jeff and I live and everything. So that may be a good thing from the inner cities. And urbanization, that trend line, what we've been talking about for the last 15 years, live, work, play, moving out to the suburbs, moving out of the city and stuff, probably will accelerate a little, I would suspect, in terms of that and the way a lot of people work and interact with each other. So who knows how it'll manifest itself, but there are changes that are definitely out there.
Yeah. It's been a roller coaster ride when you think about all of the millennial, that whole trend and everybody moving back into the city. That was only the past five or 6 or maybe 10 years. And it's just amazing to me. We've been doing this, Freddie, you and I have been doing it for a lot of years, but seeing a lot of these trends come and go, and they come back, it's like the tides.
Yeah, and I think a lot of
bad times.
And I think it's very important. I'm glad you brought up the millennials, and we're both parents of millennials and the multiple generations, and for the ones on the call. And that's one of the reasons for my doing this is talking about, like if you've been starting the business in the last 10 years, you've had a very, very good market. So this change is very abrupt. And so what are the things that you need to do to adapt to the change in the market and the change of your clients? I would also say to us older generation that have been on the call here in the industry, if you look at our kids or the millennials, they've had 2 very big events, depending on where they are in their lives. If they're between 30 and 35 years old, they came into the workforce during the financial crisis, and then they've had this event. And this event is like a war, or like a depression, or it's not a depression, but the psychology behind it. So you need to understand what's happening with people psychologically too, the underlying fears and concerns and elements. I don't want to get too heavy on that because we don't know yet, but it's very important to understand the psychology and the drivers behind all that. So hopefully this was helpful. I'm here. By the way, you see my our contact data there. I'd be glad to do this for any office. I've done it with other networks where the offices have had their office meetings, and so glad to give you a version of this presentation. I have a whole set of slides, not just the ones you guys have seen today. And for Obi and myself and Tina, this is our way of giving back to the business. And so anything we can do to help you guys, please let us know and feel free to call.
Hey, Fred, Dave Pryor in Los Angeles again.
Hey, Dave.
say hi to Obi. And
Will do.
I'll give you a free advertisement here. Obi helped the Gibbon Company restructure its ownership, a stock sale, compensation, and at that level, these guys are terrific. And I don't know you, Fred, but I known Obi for a long time, and really appreciate.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the ad. And just a quick, well, first of all, events like this, we do a lot of work on succession planning, what to do with we only specialize in small to medium-sized commercial real estate services firms. Obi worked for me for a bunch of years. He was the CFO and chief administrative officer for me when I was running Coldwell Banker Commercial. Then he went on his own. So when I left, I was actually Jeff Garibaldi, who's on the phone, let me hang my hat there for a period of time. And Obi was there, and that's how we came together. So Jeff brokered that deal, I guess. So but anyway,
you trained him well.
No, he's very good. You know, and we both have our own sets of skills. You know, I'm more on the organizational design and consulting, but having grown up in the brokerage business my career, so I spent a lot of time on that side of the business. But I appreciate the shout out, and and frankly, in doing this, wasn't trying to get attribution for it or anything, but it was more, it's for a business that's been so good to us that it's our way of giving back. But I appreciate the opportunity, and we're here for all of you if you need us. So thank you.
Yeah.
And Garibaldi shares that same respect for Obi and Valuation Alliance, because we still they did a similar program for us, and we continue to consult on a regular basis, monthly basis. Obi was part of our team, so not part of the company, but it's very much a part of what we're doing going forward. So again, very objective.
Thank you. So, you know, with that, I'll close out. If there's no more questions, we wish you all healthy and sustainable elements going forward and everything. And we're here to help. Anything we can do. So,
thanks very much.
Thanks,
Thank
Fred.
you.
thank you, guys.
To everyone on the call, we'll be sending out the audio recording and the slides shortly. Thanks for
Great.
being here.
Likewise.
Thanks, John.
See you guys.